Um, Namaste, Anuradha ji. Welcome to this discussion on your journey about discovering temples of Bharat, the Devalayas of Bharat.
Namaste, and thank you very much for inviting me to your show. Happy to be a part of it.
So we'll start with the very first temple that you visited.
Honestly, I don't remember because when you're born in India, you start visiting temples as soon as you're born. And, I must have gone with my parents, with my grandparents to our neighborhood temples. And I grew up in multiple places because my father worked in defense, and every 2, 3 years, we used to be in a new location. And we used to travel a lot. My grandparents, my parents traveled a lot. So I honestly don't recall which was the oldest temple. All I recall is that every Tuesday we used to go to a Hanuman temple and offer bundi prasad, and that bright orange colored bundi prasad. And all of us used to wait for the prasad to come back to us to eat. So that's my oldest temple memory, so to say. Which was the first one, I wouldn't remember. I mean, I must have gone as an infant. And that must be the
So,
case for almost every Indian, I believe.
yeah, yes. Most of us do visit the local temples. That's the first interaction that we usually
Right.
have with temples. But
And let me tell you, those are the most important temples in your life. We keep talking about temples which are grand, which have a history, which look beautiful, which we see nowadays. We see again and again in social media, and we get this FOMO that I have not seen this temple. But spiritually, the most important temple is the temple close to you, something that is located close to your house, because that temple's energy impacts you on a daily basis, or you impact the energy of that temple on a daily basis. So for you, the temple next to your home is the most important temple.
this is not something which everybody understands,
No,
yeah,
no, no, no. And
the
that's why you
importance of
should visit that temple. Visiting that temple regularly is the most important thing. You can visit Kashi Vishwanath. You can visit, I mean, most people visited it once in a lifetime. These days, it's easy to go there, so you can visit it 10 times in a lifetime. Uh, but the most important temple for you, which you should visit regularly as possible, is the temple in your neighborhood, because that's the deity who's closest to you. That's the deity whose energy impacts you. That's the deity who will listen to you on it, who can see you. You live in that deity's kshetra. So it's called the kshetra devata. So that is the most important temple.
um, can you explain a little bit more about this Kshetra Devta, Grama Devta, and the
So I have a complete talk on the different types of temples. I did it for Sangam Talks, and I've done it for a few other channels. So I explained the big grand stone temples that we see, most of which have survived mostly in South India, some in Central India, and minimalistically in Northern India, are royal temples. They were built by the kings who were in power when these temples were built. So, and they are a very good indicator of history. They're like history books. They are open air history books with a lot of stories written on them, lot of craft, art, heritage written on them. They tell us a lot about our past. They tell us a lot about the space and time in which they were built, but they are just a royal temple built by the kings and the queens. They may not be, I'm saying, spiritually the most important temples. They were probably the personal temples of the royal family, or they were royal temples which were open to public, where public could visit, especially during festivals. So if it's a Shiva temple, most of the time it would be opened on Shivaratri for public, while rest of the time the royal family may be the primary user of that temple. So these are royal temples, and they are, like I said, they are history books, and there is ample documentation of these temples. It probably started during the British era, and right now most of our art historians are documenting these temples in terms of architecture, in terms of stylistic details, in terms of stories that are carved, in terms of techniques used, in terms of period, in terms of what all the deities are there. All that is being documented, or it's already documented to a large extent for most of the royal temples. So that's one category. Second is our tirtha sthalas. Now, who created them? When did they get created? Nobody really knows, but they are the most ancient sacred spots on the map of Bharatvarsha. These some examples would include our 12 Jyotirlingas, our 51 Shakti Peeths, or our 108 Divya Deshams, or our Ashtaganapati Kshetras, or Surya Kshetras, or Siddha Kshetras, places where our Rishi Munis have done tapasya, or Siddha Purush has achieved that Siddhi. Wherever the Siddhis were achieved, wherever tapasya was done, those are Tirthalas. They are typically associated with the water body. Either it could be a river, it could be a lake, it could be a pond, it could be a step well, um, it could well be an ocean. So these are typically associated with Tirthasthalas. So they are the real sacred spots on the body of Bharatvarsha. In fact, our scriptures say, just like some parts of our body are more sacred than the rest of the body. Uh, for example, our right ear is supposed to be the most sacred part of our body. That's why when people take their guru's name, they touch the right ear. Feet are not supposed to be as sacred. That's why we don't touch anything we consider respectable with our feet. We don't touch books with our feet. We don't touch elders with our feet, because anything that we respect is not to be touched with our feet. So our feet are not so sacred. Similarly, on the body of a land, and in this case, we are talking about the land of Bharatvarsha, which is defined as south of Himalayas and north of the sea. There are certain spots which are more sacred than the others, and these are our Tirthasthalas. And they come in the form of water bodies, they come in the form of mountains. So Kailash Mansarovar, which is a lake as well as a mountain, or Arunachaleshwar is a mountain, which is, or Girnar Parvat is a mountain, which is sacred to us. It can be a river, it can be a forest, like in Naimisharanya, which is where most of our scriptures were discussed, talked, written. Some a place near Lucknow in UP, in the current day India. So there are aranyaks which were sacred, and there were sacred groves. So a lot of these things were our tirthasthalas. So they are the most sacred spots. Then comes Kul Devatas. Now these are the Devatas which are very, very specific to certain communities or certain families. Each of us have a Kul Devata, and those of us who don't know, just look at where do you go after important rituals in your family. For example, after weddings, for Mundan ceremony, or post-death rituals, the places that you go to are typically Kul Devatas or Kul Devis. Then there are Kshetra Devatas. So regionally, every region um, comes under a certain Devata, a Kshetra Devata. So, for example, when you go to Kolhapur Mahalakshmi, she's called Karavirapura Vasini. Or when you go to Annapurna in Kashi, she's called Kashipur Vasini. So these are the people, these are the deities who have a jurisdiction over a certain area, or every area in India I was under the jurisdiction of some devta. So if you were living in a gram or a village, you would come under gram devata. You would, if you go to the villages, mostly in South India, because North India, the geographies have changed drastically, you would see there is a temple at the center of the town, mostly a Devi temple at the center of the town. And from that temple, the roads emanate in all directions, and the town comes around that. So that Gram Devi becomes the deity for the whole of the village. You may have your own Kula Devta, you may have your own Ishta Devta. Now, Ishta Devta is a concept where whatever deity appeals to you. So, if you like Krishna, Krishna is your Ishta Devta, irrespective of what your family follows, what your spouse follows, what anybody else follows. It's the form of Devata that appeals to you, which is your Ishta. So, Ishta Devata, Kshetra Devata, Kul Devata, Tirthasthala. These are some of the temples that you can and you should visit. I hope that's in brief. We can talk in detail about it some other day, but this is in brief. I hope it's clear.
Yes, yes. Um, so talking about temples, I wanted to know a little more about the Karni Mata temple that you've visited.
Okay.
You
So
visited many
Karani,
Devi temples, but I found this Karni Mata temple very interesting. So I wanted.
uh, so Devi, the concept of Devi is such that she can manifest in as many swarups as you want her to be or as needed. So if you read the key Devi text, which is Devi Mahatmya or Durga Saptashati, or Chandi as it is called in Bengal, you would see that the Devi takes the swarup or the manifestation as required, as the time and as the situation demands, she takes. Sometimes she'll just make you do things, like in the first Charita of Durga Saptashati. Sometimes she collects all the energies of all the devatas and manifests into a Durga form, a Mahishasuramardini form. Sometimes she divides herself into multiple forms, like she does in the third Charita, where she creates different forms to deal with different asuras. So Devi takes in our day-to-day dealings with Devi also, she takes the swarup in which is required by the time and deshkal paristhiti, as we say. So Karani Mata is a real woman who lived about 700-800 years ago, and she lived in this area called Deshnok. It's near Bikaner in Rajasthan. And she did some the detailed stories on my blog as well as in my book Unusual Temples of India. She did some miraculous things. Now, when I say miraculous, it doesn't mean she did some miracles, but she did something so courageous that it almost looks like a miracle. And because of those courageous acts, her community was saved. Her community was, it could live on. So she became the Devi for her clan, for her kul. She became the Devi. And since then, she has been treated as a Devi, Karani Mata. Now, she has a temple. Now, the story goes that at her temple, there are about 20,000 rats who live there. Few of them are white, most of them are regular brown rats. And those rats are considered sacred. They're considered her sons. And you cannot hurt those rats in any way when you visit the temple. And the belief is that the she comes from a community called Charan community. Um, so belief is that the total number of people in Charan community plus the rats remains constant. Um, Whether it goes a little up and down, I don't know. But you can see how harmoniously the rats live with human beings in that temple, and how we respect each form of life uh, through our temples. Even in the sculptures of that temple, you see rats all over. And if I connect it to otherwise, rat is also considered the Vahana of Sri Ganesha, you know. So, but although Karani Mata and Ganesh, is there any connection? I haven't yet found it. But she's considered to be the mother of those rats. So it's a fascinating temple, and it is not a unique temple. I have a complete book on similar temples called Unusual Temples of India, where these unique temples are there. I'll give you an example of another unique temple, the Visa God, Tilkur Balaji near Hyderabad. Now, the reason I'm telling you is that because this is a recent example. In last 20-30 years, or maybe 30-35 years, this temple has got the reputation of a visa god, where you can get, if you visit the temple and you ask for a wish, you will get a visa of your desired country. Now, obviously, visas is a recent phenomena. It's, in good old days, the concept of formal visa was not there. Of course, there was a concept of a visa, not a visa, but some kind of a checking on the borders, but not really a formal visa and a passport. So this obviously is a new tradition that has come up. How it has come up is people used to visit and ask for visas, and for some people, for some small number of people, the wish came true. And then they went and told others, and then more and more people started visiting, and then a ritual developed that you chant the mantra and you take 11 rounds when you ask for the wish, and when your wish is fulfilled you come back and take 108 rounds of the temple. And when you visit that temple, you can see so many people taking 108 rounds, that when you stand there, you know that this is working. And when you know this is working, you want to try it. So this is how the temple traditions develop. So I really like to give this example because this is something that has happened in last one generation, and this is how the beliefs of a temple or the energy of a temple develops. It is possible that the energy of that temple has developed in such a way that it can actually impact the processing of your visa. It's pretty much possible.
So, because, like you said, energies of a temple develop. So, I want to come to the Khajuraho temples, um,
Mhm.
which were lying in neglect. So, many of our temples are under the ASI. So, I want to
Mhm.
know, do these temples also have their energy centers, or are they doing anything to maintain
So
those energy centers?
Khajuraho, yeah. So Khajuraho in particular, most of the temples are not practicing temples. So lot of temples, and again these are mostly royal temples. They had either been lost. Khajuraho was completely lost. In fact, Khajuraho is saved. Khajuraho temples have been saved because they were, probably that place was abandoned and jungle grew all over the place, and nobody knew these are temples. Only in some 18th, 19th century, some Britisher went there and he discovered the temples. So they were, in fact, saved because they were lost. So but there are temples, like there are a lot of Chola temples in Tamil Nadu. There are Hoysala temples all over Karnataka. There are a lot of Western Chalukya temples in Maharashtra, in the western region. There are some small Gujar Pratihara temples in Haryana, in uh, one or two temples I have found. There are some temples in Kumaon region of Uttarakhand. There are whole of terracotta temples in Bengal region. There are home temples in Assam. There are Solanki temples in Gujarat. So, see, all these temples, you can divide them roughly into two parts: one which are practicing, one which are not practicing. The one which are practicing, if they come under ASI, then there is a ASI appointed priest who worships there. And most of the times, not every time, most of the times, I found that to be a very clinical worship. You really don't have a worship, the kind of worship, let's say you see at, say, Kanchi Kamakshi in Kanchipuram, or at Nataraja temple in Chidambaram, where, or at Tirupati Balaji, or at Vaishno Devi, or at Kali Ghat. So these kind, or at Kashi Vishwanath, these temples have where a lot of people come. So ASI temples have, even if they are practicing, they look more like monuments than living temples. Though some of them are practicing, in the sense worship is done at them once or twice a day. Then there are non-practicing temples in which either the Mool Murti is Khandit, or for some reason, mostly it's because it's Khandit, the puja is not done, or they were lost for so long that the puja has not been revived there, like the case of Khajuraho temples, where only one temple is practicing temple. In those temples, those temples are more or less like relics of the past, like monuments. Can they be revived? Definitely, yes. I have a list of 4, 5 temples which we can immediately revive just by doing a pran pratishtha of the Mool Murti, or installing a new murti. And and any sthapati would tell you that there are our agamas lay down the processes for reviving temples very, very clearly. So, for example, Sun Temple in Modhera, you know, it is pretty much intact except that there is no murti in the Garbhagriha. So, can we install a new murti and start the practice? Yes. The same can be done for uh, Khajura temples. The same now the same may not be possible in, let's say, Konark temple, Sun Temple at Konark, because you'll have to rebuild the whole of Garbhagriha. The whole Garbhagriha is destroyed. So depending on a case to case basis, some of these temples can be revived just by doing Murti Pratishtha and Pran Pratishtha of the Murti. Some of them would need rebuilding of the temples, and some of them may not be in a state to be revived. I don't know. I mean, we need to work on creating a list of temples which can be done, which cannot be done. So that's your answer for uh, ASI controlled temples.
Yeah, because I mean, if HRC is there, you can still say that there is a possibility. I mean, a practicing temple can still be revived. So when you have an ASI, it becomes more like a historical body than a religious
Monument.
one. So yeah.
Yes,
So
yes, yes.
the one more thing that I wanted to ask was about the Jalashakti blog that I saw. I just wanted to know. So are these centered around temples? Uh, how are they?
No, they are. They're not centered around temples, but temples, of course, do play their own part. So water is the key element for survival. All the civilizations around the world, they have come up around water bodies, primarily around rivers. That's why you always have a Saraswati civilization, a Sindhu civilization, a Ganga civilization. The civilizations always come on the banks of the rivers, because water is the first and the basic requirement for survival, right? And water is the most precious thing also. We can survive without anything, but not without water. So you need mechanisms to store water and store drinkable water. Otherwise, the ocean has a lot of water, but which is not usable. You need that fresh water that you can use to drink, to cook, to for your fields, for agriculture, for your all our basic needs. We need water. So water was the central point of a civilization's existence. You know and if we look at our cultural heritage of water, there are ample places in India where we see beautiful examples of water management. And one of them, which can be found across India, is the temple tanks. So, all the temple tanks were, in a way, they were all water management systems. So, all the excess water would be channelized underground using these ponds, which, because they were associated with temples, would typically be kept clean. Then there is this beautiful book by Anupam Mittal ji, called Aaj Bhi Khare Hai Talab, which is about the whole tradition of digging ponds and digging step wells and creating them, and how it used to be a community activity. Today, we are completely disconnected from our source of water. If I ask you which river's water do you get in your tap, you'll probably not know the answer. Most people don't know the answer. That is the level of our disconnection. While culturally, we worshipped every source of water. We worshipped our wells, we worshipped our step wells, we worshipped our ponds, we worshipped our rivers. That meant that we were extremely respectful towards water. We knew the value of water. There's so many proverbs. I've written about this in detail in my book Lotus in the Stone, how there are cultural references to preserving water, and how people knew based on the level of the ponds. Our rivers have sculptures. You go to a place called Burhanpur. It's on the banks of Tapti River, and in the middle of the river there is a huge sculpture of an elephant in the middle of the river. And now today we tend to think it's just an art thing, but in India nothing was done without purpose. Every art form had a purpose. So that sculpture is actually a water marker. You could figure out how much water you have. They could even figure out that if the water reached this level, then there will be a flood tomorrow in the next town. So these were some very, very basic. So I have found these water management, incredible water management techniques in places like Mandu, which is on top of a rocky plateau. There is zero source of water except rainwater, and that place had Even today, that place has so many ponds and so many water collection, and the whole architecture of their palace is designed around storing water in such a way that they could afford to have swimming pools. Today, in all our modernity, in all our laid out pipes of water to distribute water with all technology available to us, most people struggle to maintain their swimming pools. But in a place where there's zero ground source of water, they could manage to have swimming pools because they captured every drop of rain that they could have. You go to your Kanheri caves in Mumbai and you'll see this beautiful water management system built in. You go to Shringaverapur on the banks of Ganga in UP, you will find beautiful water management system. Every village has a water management system, and they were so beautifully managed. So I have been arguing through my writing that we need to bring back the culture of water. We need to bring back the culture of respecting water so that we stop wasting water and we stop respecting the fact that our life is dependent on water. And we need to re-establish that connect we had with water. People, there are sayings like कोस कोस पे बदले पानी चार कोस पे बानी. So the fact that there are so many, at least in Hindi, there are so many kahawats which say यहाँ का पानी पिया है. So so it dictated, कहाँ का पानी पिया है dictated your personality. And today we are so disconnected from that. We don't even know which water we are drinking. Especially if you are drinking bottled water, you have no idea what water you are drinking, or if it has. I mean, and if you go through some of the um, so-called scientific analysis, they say water has memory, which means our memories are getting intermingled completely. So I've been saying that, one, our native architecture has to take care of water management inherently. Two, we have to start respecting our water sources, and that will also help us keep them clean. So traditionally you will see lot of uh, lot of punishments were defined for anybody who dirtied a water source. Today we, without even thinking, we just throw our water bottles and our chips packets into water.
And again, acha, another thing is about the tirthas, tirtha yatras and normal. When the difference between pilgrimages and tourism, that people need to understand, that people are missing. The point right now. Like tirtha stalas are just treated as another tourist spot.
Yeah. So today, what people say is spiritual tourism. So my argument is that a pilgrimage and a tourism are diametrically opposite in their design. Now, when we do Tirtha Yatra, and our scriptures very, very clearly tell us to do a Tirtha Yatra, you need to follow a lot of yam niyam. You not to follow a lot of niyam. You follow brahmacharya, which is much more than celibacy, what people think. You follow brahmacharya, you do vrata, you control your eating, you eat the simplest possible sattvic minimalistic food. You follow all the things, you sleep on time, you get up on time, you do swadhyaya, you read scriptures, you chant, you do your jap, you do your tap. You take your sankalp of going to a pilgrimage, and then when you are at the pilgrimage place, you focus on the deity for whom you have done the pilgrimage. Or deity could be also your guru, or a saint, or a siddha purush whom you've gone to meet, or whom you want to engage with. And so a pilgrimage is essentially something which focuses on controlling your senses so that you can go inwards. It's as much a journey outward as it is a journey inward. Pilgrimage is something that you do to know yourself, to know the world, for an atma gyan, as they say. So you need to control your senses as much as possible and engage in jap, tap, dhyan, dan, snan, these kind of things. While what is tourism? In tourism, you are essentially trying to engage your senses as much as possible. You're trying to eat more than you need. You're trying to eat as many things as possible. Your schedule, your daily schedule, your sleeping and waking up goes for a toss. You meet far more people than you would meet in an average life. So here your senses are in a heightened engaged sense. Their engagement of your senses is really heightened. All your senses, you're seeing more, you're hearing more, you're eating more, you're feeling more, you're processing a lot more than everything. So they're diametrically opposite in nature. So can a same place offer you the same thing? I don't think so. I would say, can a tourist go to a pilgrimage place? Sure, you can go, as long as you make sure that those who are on the pilgrimage are not disturbed. Those who are following who have come for pilgrimage, for their spiritual enhancement, or for their as a spiritual sojourn, they are not disturbed, because you want to. So I'll give you an example. If you're doing a party on the banks of Ganga in Banaras, you're definitely going to disturb some people who may have come for their dream spiritual trip to Kashi. So in their design itself, they are entirely different. So as long as we understand that difference, I think we can plan our travels accordingly.
Another thing is about the current generation. They need to understand the importance of visiting temples and what they should do. So anything, any message that you want to, I mean, particularly give the younger generation? You know, not many actually visit temples also. So why they should be visiting, what they should be doing, things like that.
Yeah. So I think first of all, the families need to make sure that they are visiting temples, because families that have a discipline of visiting temples, their younger generation picks up. It's very difficult if I am not going to the temples, or my children don't see me going to the temples. Then it's very difficult for me to tell them to go to the temples. That's number one. And I do see a lot of parents saying that, oh, I don't have time for it, but my child should go. So that's not going to happen. Two, you should create a small practice in your home temple. Every Hindu home has a temple. So you should make some simple practice. It could be as simple as lighting a diya, or lighting a agarbatti, or ringing a bell, or saying one small mantra which your child participates in. uh, then start visit, like I always say, start visiting your neighborhood temple. Create a community there and start visiting it. If you can't visit often, visit once a week, visit once a month if possible, but do visit that temple. And once you start doing that, rest everything will follow. I mean, believe me, it will follow. You don't have to make too many efforts. Going to the bigger temples is, like I said, it's more driven by what attracts you, or what draws you. So for example, if you are a Vishnu bhakta, a Jagannath Puri, or a Tirupati Balaji is going to attract you. If you are a Devi bhakta, then Kamakhya is going to attract you. So visit those places, but those have to be planned. They have to be, you can visit them. How often can you visit them? Practically maximum once a year, or once in many years. um, so essentially, the temple that is most important for you is the temple which is next to you, which you can relate to, which you can establish a relationship with.
Yeah, especially in urban areas. I mean, now to, in every city also there are several temples.
There are there are temples, and so yeah, that's a good question. Every urban area has grown around a village. Every urban area, which is now a suburb or a new age city, has grown around a core village. So that village will always have a village deity. I have found it in most places that I have lived in. So you can always find the Grama Devata of the place that you are a part of. Even if you are living in the biggest of cities, they are composed of hundreds of villages. So look for them. It may need a one time effort to find it, but you can find it. And if you can't find it, find the closest temple. I'm sure there is a temple within a kilometer of every home.
Yes, yes. Yeah, even in Mumbai, there are quite a lot of
Yes.
temples
Oh,
at the moment.
Mumbai has a lot of temples.
Yeah,
You go to Jhaveri Bazar area, you'll be surprised how many old temples are there. I won't say ancient, but old temples are
yeah. Right from like you have uh, Buleshwar and all of those.
there.
Mumbai Devi is
Yes, yes,
also very.
yes, yes.
Um,
I
I,
have a podcast on that on Mumba
oh,
Devi's Mumbai, around on the temples of that area.
yeah. And what about a little bit about your book on Ayodhya Mahatmya, the latest one? That is your
Okay.
latest book?
My latest is Devi temples, but Ayodhya
Devi
Mahatmya.
temples, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even,
Yeah. So I'll tell you about all the books. So I have this
yeah,
series
sure.
on Devalaya called Devalaya series, which has three published books: Unusual Temples of India, Cave Temples of India, and Devi Temples of India. And we are working on the fourth one. Then I have Lotus in the Stone, which is my personal journey of discovering India and discovering the invisible threads that bind India. So what is it that connects you and me? We probably speak, if we were not speaking English at home, we probably speak different languages. We dress up differently. We have everything different. Then what is it that binds you and me? And that's probably Sanatan Dharma, and it includes even those people who do not really follow Sanatan Dharma, even they are connected with those same invisible threads that bind India. So that book is all about this, and that book I really recommend to people who are very disconnected from India's base culture. So anybody who reads that book will feel really deeply connected to India, uh, or they'll rediscover their roots in India. Then Ayodhya Mahatmya is a book which is a translation of Ayodhya Mahatmya from Skanda Puran. But the highlight of that book is that I've recreated the map of Ayodhya as it is defined in Skanda Puran and as I have physically gone and found in Ayodhya. So I got to spend some time in Ayodhya, and I made a list of all the places that are mentioned in Skanda Puran, and I located each of them, and then we've recreated a map of those places. And that's part of this book. And then it's a 10 chapters of Ayodhya Mahatmya, which essentially describes each and every Tirtha Sthala which is in the city of Ayodhya. So that is it. Then I have co-edited a book called Navaratri, When Devi Comes Home, with Dr. Vivek Devaroy. In this, we have documented how Navaratri is celebrated in 16 different kshetras of India, including Nepal. And this again shows the same thing, unity in diversity, how at the base, the Navaratri festival is the same. The base belief, the deity, the dates, everything is same, but how it is celebrated, the manifestation of the expression of celebration is very, very different in all the 16 kshetras. So that is what we've documented in this book. And I have a very old book called The Mouse Charmers, which is about the pioneering digital entrepreneurs of India. It's a book on business innovation. So these are my 7, 8 books, and hopefully you'll have some more next time we speak.
Yes, sure. And the one final question. You have journeyed across Bharat, you've visited many temples. So, can you tell us some of the things that bind us together as a civilization? That means from north, from across Bharat.
Okay. So let me ask you, like I was saying, that we have everything is different. Our language is different. Our food is different. Our clothing is different. Probably our daily routines are different. Uh, lot of customs we follow are different. Then what is it that binds us? Let me ask you, if I told you that uh, Vikram, who was with us in the conversation, uh, is like Hanuman, what would you interpret of this?
That he's strong, he's intellectual,
Hmm.
uh, he's devoted.
He's dependable.
Huh, yeah, he's dependable.
If he can lift mountains,
Yeah, he can solve problems.
Right. So if need be, he'll go to any extent to help you or to
Yeah.
take you out of a problematic situation.
Yes. Yes.
I don't have to say any other word. I just said one word for him. And our understanding of that character is 100% on the same page. Is that right?
Yes. Yes. Absolutely true.
If I had used the word Shakuni for him, sorry Vikram, but if I had used the word Shakuni for him, what would you
Then
know?
then you would be thinking about someone who is scheming, plotting. You know.
Be aware of, right?
Yeah. Be
Somebody
aware of.
you should maintain a distance from. This is what binds India. Our common
Right.
understanding of the ethos. This is exactly what binds us. The moment I say Krishna, you will think of, you will have the feeling of a bhakti, of reverence in your heart and mind, just as I would. And in my book, Lotus in the Stone, I've written about this. How, just by chanting Hanuman Chalisa together, I became friends with people because we were like now the devotees of same Devata. Or, taking a tour of temples connects you at far deeper level than any of our interests. Like we keep saying, people like us who like same movies, like same books and same people and do same things, and those things connect you at a very, 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 very
Superficial.
superficial level. But the
Maybe.
moment you are connected through spirituality, those bonds are far more deep. Your understanding, even if we are not spiritual, even if we don't follow any rituals, we don't visit temples, we don't read scriptures, we don't believe in, we are atheists. But these threads are so strongly embedded in us that we inherently understand them.
Right.
And that
Right.
keeps getting reinforced when we read, when we visit temples, when we see the impact of spirituality on us.
So that is also another reason why people must visit temple. To
I
keep.
would say visit. I would never prescribe visiting. I would say visit, try it out, see it for yourself. If it works for you, visit. If it doesn't work, don't visit. And I
Yeah.
haven't come across anybody
Would
who
say it
stopped
doesn't work.
visiting after they start visiting.
Yeah. No. Yes. And any final words for the viewers?
you know, uh, Please read my books, please read my blogs, and if
Yes.
you have any questions, please reach out to me on social media or on email, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. And
Yeah, social media. I just wanted to ask you about that one thing on that Instagram that you put small stories, uh, episodes from our script, from our granthas, right? Where you
yes,
explain
so
episodes. So
so
that's
yeah, so
available.
I keep reading some scripture or the other. So I started it 6 7 years ago. I read one scripture every morning. I get up and I read for an hour or so. So right now I'm reading Mahabharat, and whatever I think is a small snippet that can be shared, I share on Twitter as well as Instagram. And it's more like sharing the knowledge that I'm gaining. Sometimes it leads to conversations, and sometimes it leads to more knowledge when people who've already read it share more knowledge about it. So yeah, that's what I've been doing for almost 6 7 years now. In fact, I'm consolidating all that in the form of a book, which should hopefully come in a month or so, called How to Read Indian Scriptures, which basically answers all the questions of people who it tries to remove all the mental roadblocks that we have in reading the original texts.
Right,
Like, do I
right.
need to read no Sanskrit? Can I read this text? Where should I start? What if I get stuck? How are the texts organized? How should I read? All those basic roadblock questions will get answered in that book. We will probably have it in a month or so.
Sure. Then I'll look forward to another interaction at that time. And thank you
Sure.
so much for joining us today and for so much of knowledge on the Devalayas that we needed. Namaste,
Thank
Karan.
you so much, Maitri, for having me, and wish you all the best. You're doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you. Namaste.
Namaste.